All right, so please state your name for me.
All right. Doug Bueller.
Hmm.
Do you want me to kind of like what I do and all that kind of stuff?
I was
Title?
gonna get into
Okay.
that.
Yeah. Yep.
So far, when I asked my mom what your title is, she gave me this esteemed list: Dr. Douglas Bueller, Interim Dean of the College of Agriculture and Natural Resources, Director of Michigan State University Ag Biotech Research, Senior Associate Dean of Research, and Professor of Plant, Soil, and Microbial Science. How's the aim right there?
Yeah. Microbial. Yeah. Close.
Okay.
So.
Microbial. There we go.
Yep.
Thank you. So, to start things off, for all these various positions, what would you say your main responsibilities are?
Well, the bottom line, I guess, if you wanted to put what my job is in a very short package, is that my job is to help make a lot of really bright people productive and help them do their jobs. So what my role is, and my primary role, is that we hire scientists, professors, faculty to teach, to do research, and then to take that into the community. So my job is really to manage that whole, I think a lot of that process, to make sure that there is resources available for them to do their jobs, that standards are upheld, that people perform their jobs in an appropriate way, determine salary levels, promotions, those types of things. Really, that the oversight of the operation to allow what we hope is a lot of good things to happen for a lot of people.
Excellent. I actually went to a couple other questions that was coming in, but needless to say, for your various positions that you have, traveling or meeting with different people or countries, companies or industries all around the world seems like a must.
Mm-hmm.
From some of the escapades that my mom has mentioned. So, what would you do as a person to prepare for these type of situations?
Well, that's a really good question. I think the first thing that I always try to do is particularly this is the first time that I'm going to a country, is to make sure that I learn some of the most important social and cultural issues. I mean, the last thing that you want to do when someone is hosting you in a place you've never been is to violate some of their most sensitive cultural things. I'm sure, given your time in the service, that's probably some of the first things you probably learned about, given where. So that's a really important thing. What I try to do is always listen and watch, and always look for cues. I think it's this is sometimes for me personally is a little bit difficult sometimes, particularly in cultures where the sort of the ranking person
Mm-hmm.
is expected to go through the door first, to sit in a certain place. That's not my natural inclination. I'm a fairly informal person. I like to just be. I'm much more comfortable just being kind of one of the group sort of thing, as opposed to being the one that sits at the head of the table. But I learned over the years that in many cultures, by not doing that, you're actually, that's a problem. You're insulting them. So I mean, you are often what you would consider like the head of the party or whatever. So you are the ranking individual in that group. So it's your job to sit at the head of the table, to sit next to the ranking person of that institution or those types of things. So the bottom line is, like I said, I try to be as sensitive to local culture and responsive as possible. Another part that helps me quite a bit is most of the time when I travel to a country that I've not been to before, or I've only been to a few times, I'm most of the time I'm with somebody who may well be a native of that country.
Okay.
For example, when I go to India, the person that I usually go to India with was born and raised in India. He's been in the U.S. for a long time, but he's very helpful because he'll make sure that I do the right things, and if I need a little gentle push, go sit over there or do this, they'll do that. So it is sort of interesting because I've had at times people kind of ask me questions about what geez, you must be a very savvy traveler because you've been to all this place. I said, well, in some ways I'm not, because I'm lucky enough that I usually have somebody. I don't just hop on a plane and go by myself to Zambia or something like that. I'm usually traveling with somebody who has either experience in that country or, like I said, is a native. And so I'm not quite as, but I think the important thing is, at least in my mind, is always to be very sensitive to the local culture. Keep your eyes open. There's so many resources out there now in terms of what you can find on the web and whatever to read about the culture. Learn a little bit about it before you go. If there are a few key words in the language, hello, thank you, things like that you can learn, so that you can at least show that you have some interest in learning the local language. That's often something also that people find very useful. And if you're, another thing to think about is if you have any, allergies, or you don't eat certain things, you have to be a little bit careful, because sometimes the thing that is the local delicacy that you eat at the ceremonial meal may be something you don't like, or if you don't consume alcohol, because often toasts and a local liqueur or something is an important part of it, particularly if you're signing some agreement or something like that. Just lots of little things.
Okay.
So don't ever assume that the rest of the world behaves like we do here.
Okay. And that actually went into part of it. You mentioned, and the way it seems like you do a lot of this research on your own time, where as us, we would have to take like a week long of cultural sensitivity courses. Is this the type of thing where you have to do a lot of that research on your own, or is there something through MSU that helps you?
Well, there's two pieces of it. One thing that is very helpful, and this is really more towards the health-related issues of traveling. There is, in the MSU Health Center, there's what's called the travel clinic. And whenever I go somewhere that I've never been before, particularly in a part of the world where there might be malaria, there might be issues worrying about hepatitis, all of those kind of things, you just make an appointment over there. You tell them where they're going. They look up the IDs, and they have your vaccination, because I've been going there for a long time. They have the vaccination record, so they know what I've had. They match that up of what you should have to go to that country. Or if it's a malaria area, they'll give you your prescription for your anti-malarial pills, all those kind of things. And then usually give you some sort of a, not real long, but depending on the country, a 10, 12 page.
Like dossier type.
Yeah. What are the crime levels? Can you drink the water? What areas that you should stay out of? Is it generally safe? There's also now with some of the things that are going on now in the world, now I'll usually get registered. There's like a State Department website that you can register yourself for, and you'll get travel alerts.
Okay.
So, for example, here in the last less than a year, I've been in both Egypt and Saudi Arabia. Obviously, both places that there are some concerns. And actually, I went to Egypt just a couple of weeks after that Russian airplane was blown out of the air. So you're kind of paying attention.
Right.
And I also went through Paris like 3 days after the bombing of the nightclub, stuff like that. So anyway, you have to make decisions, those kind of things. But and back to your question, there are a lot of resources out there that you can just get on the web. What I often will do is, since these are long trips, I'll pull a bunch of these things together, put them in my bag, and I'll read it. I'll read some of the more detailed stuff while I'm on the plane. But I think the most important thing is, like I said, is a really good service that we have here, and anybody who doesn't take advantage of it is to have the travel clinic. Because like I said, they'll make sure you have all the right vaccinations. If you need any prescriptions, they take care of it for you. They give you some background information.
Okay.
And that's very helpful.
Now, do those type of events or anything related to their culture, does that play a hindrance of it, where if like any red flags go off where you'll be like, I can't do this trip at all?
Well, the one in particular recently that was a little bit of an issue, but it actually was the other way around, is that we were invited to Saudi Arabia. And as we put together the group of people that we thought were most appropriate to go there, we had to make the decision of, were we going to take any women with us because of the issues there? And we just made the decision that because of the complications, that it was just going to be a men only trip because of obviously the culture and the way women dress and the way they move about in the community and things like that.
And for those who don't know, you can't straight up go to Saudi Arabia. That's one of those things where the government has to invite you to come by.
That's right.
All right. So that of itself must be not only an honor, but also a big, I wouldn't say hindrance, but definitely a big.
Well, you don't decide to go on Tuesday and go on Friday.
Right.
And people like your mother spend a lot of time taking care of all those things, so I can go. So going the process, for example, Saudi Arabia, the process for getting a visa to get into Saudi Arabia I don't remember, but it took weeks. You had to fill out forms, had to submit a resume, all these kind of things, agree to all sorts of things, in terms of their cultural issues. So it varies a lot by country, but often you're right. I mean, in some of these countries, if you don't have an invitation from an official government agency or university, a very specific reason for being there, it's very difficult.
Okay.
It can be very difficult to get in. Yep, that's a good point.
All right, changing gears for this question. There seems to be a difference between the idea of being a leader and also being a boss. What is each of those terms or words definitions to you, and how would you label yourself? And is there such thing as a happy medium between the two?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I agree with you that being a leader and being a boss are two different things. There's certainly overlap. When I think of being boss, I prefer to be the boss as little as possible. What I want to have in the people that work, and I prefer to say with me as opposed to for me, but whatever, is people who know what their job is. They're dedicated to doing a good job. They come to work every day, get their work done, and don't need a lot of boss type things.
Mm-hmm.
When you need to start being a boss, for me, that's when you're starting to have problems, because you clearly either the employee isn't of the quality that you would like, or in some cases you've not done an appropriate job of helping that person and defining their responsibilities and what they should do. Mm-hmm. So that, being boss, there are certain things about being a boss that you just have to do. Mm-hmm. You have to do evaluations, determine raise levels, promotions, all those kind of things. That's more the nuts and bolts part of it. But in terms of just daily interactions, I don't, sometimes I'll say, if I have to be the boss, I'll be the boss. But I would much rather have people that understand what their job is, that are willing to work together, and those kind of things. Being a leader is a little more, I suspect, more of a subtle thing. I think leading by example is the most important thing you can do. Because if I'm not willing to do things and behave in a way and show up to work and do my job at a high level, how can I expect the people that work in this office that are responsible to help me do my job to do that?
Right.
And so that's really important to me. I mean, I'm the boss. I'm the leader here. I feel like, now I travel a fair bit, so I'm not here, but I should be pretty close to the first one here in the morning, and the last one to leave at night. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I wish that wasn't the case because I get tired, but and I've seen enough of that. For example, I've listened to my wife, for example, talk about a person that she worked for a long time. Very accomplished scientist, did a lot of good things, but he'd show up at 10 o'clock in the morning, go home at 3:30 or whatever. Well, what kind of an example does that set? Mm-hmm. When you're the lead person in that unit, you make more money than anybody else, you get the accolades, and all these other people are sitting there working, putting in their minimum of 8 hours, maybe 9 or 10, mm-hmm. and you get a chunk of the credit, mm-hmm. and you're off golfing or whatever you do.
Right.
And so that to me is that is the first and the most important thing. Mm-hmm. And then maybe we're a little bit more the, in terms of a workplace situation, where I think maybe leading and being the boss probably overlap a little bit is giving very clear signals, being consistent, being even-tempered, even if you tend to be a little bit grumpy.
Mm-hmm.
As long as you're grumpy all the time,
mm-hmm.
people know what to expect. And if you do a little bit of reading, I read something recently that the type of boss that people had the most trouble dealing with is one that was inconsistent.
Okay.
One day we're best buddies.
Mm-hmm.
The next day you come in and you treat me like a jerk.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you're a jerk all the time, well, you go, well, okay, this person's a jerk. I work for him.
Mm-hmm.
I either put up with it, but you know what to expect.
Right.
So consistency, clarity, not doing a lot of last minute things. I try really hard. I mean, I think I expect quite a bit of the people that work for me, but I try not to walk out of here at 4:30 and hand some big thing
mm-hmm.
to your mother and say, I got to have this by tomorrow morning. See ya.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going for a beer. Get this done. I'll outline on my desk when I get back here. I try very hard to avoid those kind of things, unless it's an absolute emergency. And if you do that very seldom, then most people that work for you will accept that.
Okay.
Because, if 95% of the time, things go the way you want. I mean, everybody knows that things happen.
Mm-hmm.
Things happen. I got bosses too. I get a call from the president at, 4:00 this afternoon and says such and such a thing is happening. I need this by midnight or something, or by 8:00 tomorrow morning. Get it to me. Well, I have to deal with that, and
mm-hmm.
I may need somebody else's help to produce that. But if that happens once or twice a year, is one thing.
Mm-hmm.
If it happens once and twice a week, that's another thing.
Right.
So
that actually goes perfectly into my next question. Since we talked about your responsibilities for your positions here, what about the responsibilities of those appointed above as well as below you?
mm-hmm.
If that's a good way to put it.
Yeah. Well, the people above me, it just sort of ramps up in terms of the level of responsibility. I mean, the basic things I would say that, for example, the vice president for research does aren't a lot different than what I do. It's just at a different level, a higher level in the institution, or what the things that the provost deals with on the academic side. I feel the same way about my relationship with them as I hope that the people that work for me feel about me. I know what my job is, and my job is to get that done to the best of my ability and to cause them as few headaches as possible.
Mm-hmm.
That's really important to me, and I want my bosses to trust me, and I want them to think that I can do my job. And one thing for me that's really important, and this isn't always the case, is to have superiors that I'm comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to lose a half a night's sleep because I have a meeting with
mm-hmm.
one of the bosses tomorrow. I want to look forward to that, even if it's not an easy thing, because I know that the person trusts me. You can have a conversation. And some of the people that are my bosses, I'm very comfortable
mm-hmm.
talking to. Others, I'm not quite so comfortable. In terms of the other way, I don't think it really makes. It's really the same basic things. The way I think we've tried to structure this office is that pretty much everybody who's here has a specific role that they play.
Mm-hmm.
But I also want people that when people are gone or people are busy, there's a little bit of leeway between, that things get picked up. Mm-hmm. So, for example, your mother has a couple of different roles. Their big one is Project Green and all the things that go around with that. The other part is she helps with my scheduling. She does a lot of other things to help.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then Tanya, I don't know if you've met Tanya, she also does a lot of the same things in a different area, but she does a different set of grants, does most of my scheduling and travel, but if Tanya's gone for a week,
mm-hmm.
Jackie helps and vice versa. They move
mm-hmm.
around so things get done. But everybody in this office has a fairly specific role, something that they do. And I think that's very important. But on the other hand, I want people that are willing to say, you need some help today. Even though that's not my job, I'll help you with it. because we've got a big deadline coming up, or somebody's sick, or they had to leave because one of their children needed to go to the doctor. All of the things that life hands you some days that people need to be willing to help people out. And also know that if something happens that you need to be away or you're overloaded, that someone will help you when you need it as well. And also, again, back to this issue of not always be working under, not always be chasing deadlines and be, on the edge of not getting things done.
Mm-hmm.
If you have to leave, something happens, you got to go.
Right.
The work is still going to get done because you've got a little leeway there. And I think people really value the ability to know that they have a little bit of flexibility in the workplace if they have to get away and something happens, be it a child or a parent or anything else. They know that they can get away for a few hours if they have to.
Mm-hmm. Does it go with that mindset of a happy worker makes work easier type thing?
Absolutely. I have no problem. I'm more concerned if I sit in here and don't hear any occasional chatter or somebody laughing out there than if I hear the opposite. I don't, I remember many years ago when somebody said to me, they said, and I worked in a place that wasn't a horrible place to work, but it wasn't a real, people were kind of tense and stuff. And somebody said to me, they said, well, your lab, the only place I ever hear anybody laughing in this building is your lab. And I said, good. No, not good that you don't hear laughter anywhere else, but I agree with I agree with you. If you're relaxed, because nobody can work at absolute full capacity every minute of every day.
Mm-hmm.
You need a little break, and we have a lot of interactions with people. I want people to feel welcome when they come in this office. That the people will be nice to them. They'll help them. They'll chit chat. I don't have any problem with. I don't want somebody sitting out there and talking for an hour.
Mm-hmm.
But 5 minutes of what are you up to? How are your kids? How you doing? What you been up to?
Mm-hmm.
That's part of doing business, and that's part of building a relationship with people.
Very good. How often in a normal business week, if you technically have one of those, would you be in charge of writing or creating different documents or reports compared to meeting with people face to face? Or is there not really much of a routine?
It varies quite a bit. I spend a lot of time meeting with people.
Mm-hmm.
What in an average day? Well, it depends on how you define writing a report or a document. In terms of doing large documents, I don't do a ton of that. I do a lot of shorter things, letters, tons of emails. The two things I do most days are have individual meetings with people or groups of people on certain, whatever their issue is, some project, whatever, and then respond to my emails. That's really the two things that I do most of my day. And then, I write some memos, review documents, give feedback on things, those kind of things. That's the two biggest things that I spend my time on most days. So, most days I have a few breaks, but I may, from maybe 7:30 in the morning until 7 in the evening, we'll have most of that time scheduled. Try to get a little bit of break because I don't like to go home with 100 emails in my inbox or something. But,
right.
But part of the reason that it's a little bit more hectic is because temporarily I'm doing 2 jobs. So when you started with all of those different titles, that's part of the issue right now. But that'll be relieved a little bit here in a few months when I don't do one of those jobs anymore.
Oh, okay. If dealt with a problem that you yourself cannot completely solve, what steps do you take in order to solve that problem?
Well, the first thing I do, unless it's something that absolutely has to be solved immediately, is I just give myself a little time to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, one of the things that's one of the benefits of having been around quite a while and knowing a lot of people in the institution is I know a lot of people that can help me.
Mm-hmm.
And so very regularly, depending on what the nature of the problem is, I'm almost immediately thinking about who can help me with this.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a financial problem, well, okay, all right, I'll go over to see Mary and say, okay, help me understand this. What are our options? Blah 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 blah. Like it or not, we have a legal staff. Let me see their offices from here. I talk to university lawyers not every day, but several times a week. So we have, a big organization like this. There's a lot of people out there that can help you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's to me, is a very important thing that we all need to learn if you have a lot of responsibilities. Number one is unless you're a really, really special person, there's no way that you can know everything that you need to know.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're humble enough to realize that and not worry about not knowing something and comfortable reaching out for help, there's almost always somebody here
mm-hmm.
that can help. Whether it's whether someone's having an issue with mental health or something like that, there are places
mm-hmm.
that can help with things like that. Like I said, there's legal staff, there's auditors. But like I said, my first move is always to think about who do I know that can help me.
Right. Now, you mentioned humbleness and all that stuff. So, does that play a really big factor as not only just a worker, or a boss or a leader in general, just humbleness and pridefulness? Could that be something that can really help or really hurt someone in that case in regards to problem solving?
Well, I can sit here and tell you how good I am at reaching out. I will tell you that I've not always been that way. So you're absolutely right. And particularly, I think younger people, and maybe a little bit more so males,
mm-hmm.
that we're too proud to admit that you have a problem.
Mm-hmm.
You read about those things and hear about those things all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You're not willing to admit you have a problem. That is a big, that is a significant issue. And like I said, if I were to say that I was always been as comfortable with one of my first moves looking for help, I'd be lying to you. I'm not here to lie to you. It took me a long time in my life to be willing to admit that.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're right. I was raised to be very proud
mm-hmm.
and to be very self-reliant, and to say I got to go ask somebody for help was not the way. It was probably not the way that I was wired, and certainly was not the way that I was brought up.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a different situation. Like I said, and I tell people this all the time, I said, these people are here to help you. You ask somebody and give them enough time to help you solve a problem, most likely they'll get it solved. Now, don't come
mm-hmm.
with 10 minutes to get it done and expect somebody to drop everything. I think what your mother has a line, was it your ineptitude does not make a crisis for me, or something like that. Your screw up does not. Anyway, she knows the line. But anyway, you're right, and it's a fine line, because you want people that are proud of their work, but on the other hand, you also have to be recognized when it's time that you need help too.
Right. How flexible with time or resources do you have to be in order to produce quality work for your profession really efficiently?
That's an interesting question. Well, I think if things are planned pretty well, the amount of need for flexibility doesn't have to be real high.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're moving too many things around and changing too many things, you probably haven't planned very well.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, there's always unanticipated things. And being willing and able to make those adjustments is very important. One of the things that we face sometimes is that some of the resources that we receive from the federal government, more so federal than state, have a lot of restrictions on them, and you're restricted as to how you can spend the money.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's sometimes a problem that we face. Now, when I look at this organization more broadly, we have money that comes from different sources that have different levels of flexibility. Mm-hmm. So when I look at my budget, I always want to know that I've got in certain, pools of money that are very flexible, that there's money there. So if something happens, that somebody, makes a mistake, and it's the, in well-intended and all those kind of things, and the grant can't pay for it, that I have some resources available to
mm-hmm.
say, you made an honest mistake. You were trying to do your job. You did everything, you made the right decision at the right time, and something went wrong. That's a really important part of it. But you can't go overboard in that either, because then you get sloppy and you don't
right.
have enough of it. So that flexible money is often very, very valuable.
Mm-hmm.
But when you need it You know, it's kind of like that whatever $20 bill you stick in the back of your wallet. If you run out of gas or you get a flat tire or something, you got to have that little bit of,
Right.
Don't ever be penniless, right? Because you never know when you need a few bucks. So,
all right. For all your professions and titles, is there such thing as an absolute minimal requirement of education that you need to reach this status? Or is this a position where you cannot stop learning or gaining knowledge?
well, jobs like this, by their nature, you require a PhD. Most of them in my job. But your second part of the question is the much more important part. Even though I have a bunch of degrees, the things that I learned while getting those degrees are not the things that's not what I do now. I was not trained for the vast majority of what I do. But if you've heard the old line that when the real purpose of education is to learn how to learn, that's a really important thing. Because what you'll find is that you never know what opportunities are out there. If somebody would have told me when I was your age that, here's this resume with no name on it, and all of this stuff was on there and said 30 years from now, or whatever the right number is, 30, 35 years from now, this is going to be you, I would have laughed. I'd have bet him every nickel I had that there's no way I'd do that kind of stuff. No way. So you never know. But I think this idea of learning how to learn, picking up new things, finding people that are good role models that you can learn things from are very important.
Very good. And this actually goes into the next question pretty well. Basically, the idea is, and this goes for everything, I'm not sure if you heard the saying, but even the biggest and grandest trees start out as the very smallest seeds. So, what sparked your journey to get to where you are right now?
Well, I think part of it was I grew up on a very small farm, and I grew up with pretty humble beginnings. And I figured out fairly early, though I didn't know exactly where I was going, or certainly where I thought I was going is that education was the best option that I had to do something different than, my father was a wonderful person, but he spent his life getting up, milking cows 365 days a year. And I knew I didn't want to do that. And so it was really the desire to do something different. And then secondly, my father, back to your point about pride, he was a very proud man. And, one of his favorite lines was, whatever you do it better than the person next to you. And, I'll quote his exact quote. He said, doesn't matter if you're shoveling shit, you shovel more shit than the person next to you. And the idea of no matter what you're doing, what job you have, or whatever it is, to do the best you can, whether you like it or not,
right,
is really important, because people are watching, and they notice how people behave, and they see people who work hard, and it doesn't, just because you don't like something and it's your job doesn't mean you shouldn't give it your best shot.
Right.
And if you do that, opportunities most likely will come, because you just don't know what might happen. You just don't. So for me, it was just, I did not have some grand plan. I've had situations like, a deal like this where someone had come in and what their assignment was a little different than yours, but was something like, well, tell me about your plan. How did you, when you were an undergraduate, what was your plan to get where you are today? And I go, I didn't have any plan. I still don't have a plan. The job, I just come to work every day and try to do my job. And if if some other opportunity comes along to do something else at this institution, I might do it. I might not.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I mean, I would be perfectly happy to finish out my career in the job I have right now and in this office. But I don't know that that's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't have any specific ambition that says I want that job over in the big building over there. So I've never had that. I mean, that's never been my approach. It's just do whatever you're doing, do it well, and if something comes along, you react to it.
So basically, the idea of adapt and overcome plays into big.
Mm-hmm. Or another line is do the ordinary things in an extraordinary way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, whatever line you want to use, but they all say the same thing, right?
Right. And final question, because we're having such a fun time here. What would you say to all those people, or even students that are starting out or having trouble find a job or career that fits themselves? What would you say to them to let them know what they need to do?
Well, I guess I'd kind of go back maybe to the last comment.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you can't find a job right now that satisfies you or makes you happy, still do the job that you're doing the best you can, because it may open an opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Because I changed majors a few times. I wasn't the best of students my first couple of years, but luckily I didn't screw up so bad that I couldn't easily recover from it.
Right.
And one of the things that there's all of the concerns about the high cost of education and things. Now, to me, one of the things that concerns me, in addition to the debt load that a lot of young people are taking on,
mm-hmm.
is that because of the high cost for a lot of students, there's this incredible pressure to get done as quickly as possible, and probably feel a lot of pressure not to change your major a couple of times,
mm-hmm.
and explore more of what an institution like this or any other institution has available, because you're under such pressure to get the degree,
mm-hmm.
and not spend any more money than you had to. When it was not that horribly difficult back when I was an undergraduate to basically pay your own way through college. Now,
mm-hmm.
I worked a lot of hours in the summer. I worked a job during the school year,
mm-hmm.
but I got, I didn't get any money from my parents, and I never took out a loan. I had a couple small grants, but I could pay. We're just about done.
Okay.
I could pay my own way.
Mm-hmm.
So I finished up, with a PhD when I was 26 or 27 years old. Didn't have a penny in debt. You couldn't. It's basically, unless you really get tons of scholarships,
really,
or you have really rich parents, that's impossible now.
Yeah, especially for a PhD for that long period of time.
Yeah. Now, depending on the field you go in a lot of areas of science, you can actually get what's called a teaching assistantship or
mm-hmm.
research assistantship, which basically pays a living wage.
Okay.
So you can go depending on the field you go into, there are much more opportunities to pay your own way into graduate school than there are undergrad. Again, unless you have somebody with money or you get the scholarship. So
now, what's your feeling on the old phrase, it's not what you know, it's who you know?
I think it's a little both.
Okay.
I don't think one is a lot of good without the other, unless you really know the right people. But I will say, as I've gotten older, the who you know thing it's still pretty important. But I'd like to think that just because somebody knows me and thinks I can do something for them, if they don't have the goods,
right,
they're not going to get much help from me, because I don't want to embarrass myself.
mm-hmm.
If somebody asks me to write them a letter of reference or something, I'll say fine, but recognize that I'm going to write an honest letter. If you just want somebody to write a fluffy letter, I'm not your guy.
Right.
Because to me, my reputation, if I recommend you to somebody
mm-hmm.
and I say, I know this guy, you should hire him,
mm-hmm.
you better damn well not embarrass me.
Right.
Because you won't get another recommendation from me.
Exactly. Well, on that note, I think we're all set with interim dean, director, senior associate dean, professor, and PhD holder, and let alone the Cadillac of men. So I'd like to say thanks, Doug, for your time. Definitely get some good insight on what it means to do what you do, and how that to take those lessons of life and apply them to whatever you want to go into. Because that's probably one of the big things is, from your standpoint, to figure out how you got here and what to do to maintain that level or even go above. If anybody else were to do it, then that would put them on a good road to success, I would say.
Well, we're all different, but the really important thing is that to make sure that you never put yourself in a position that you can't take advantage of an opportunity because you've screwed up, you were lazy, or something like that. But anyway, well, thank you. This was when I was happy to do it. I enjoy talking about this kind of stuff, as you can tell. So
excellent.
All right, very good.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.